All right, we're back. Someone was trying to call me, and fuck them. They can wait till later. But he bought that brand new, and kind of like my dad also said, he never tried out like any other 100 series. Well, other than the other tractor he bought, which I'll get to that because I'm going kind of in order. But he bought the 160, but never tried out a 170 or 175, or never bought like a 170 gas, which again, I guess would make sense considering he used to pull the tractor in the barn at night, in the dairy barn at night with the wagon on it, because he used to, when he would feed the cows, he would, after the cows were done eating, he would pitch the silage onto the wagon and take it to the young stock, take it back out to the young stock. And he said, and so I guess it makes sense because the 160s, you could get them with the up and out exhaust, but that had the underslung exhaust, and it sits a lot lower to the ground because that's a French-made tractor, and so it's kind of meant to, anyways. So that would make sense there, and so that became the big tractor at the time. Still did quite a bit of work with the WD-45. Plowed, harrowed, planted corn with it with a Alice Chalmers 2-row corn planter, which he got rid of. Wish he kept that because I've been looking for one of those forever. But so the 160 became the bigger tractor at the time. And the loader didn't stay on it year round. The loader came off in the springtime right before haying season started. And so when he got that tractor, he bought a hay bine and went from the old school Nicholson hay tedder that he had to 4-spinner Coon, I think it was. I can't remember, but I know it was Coon, and I know it was a 4-spinner. And I'm assuming, I don't know what brand the chopper he switched to then, if he switched to a New Holland 717 or still had the old international that he had, but I know he had some New Holland chopper at some point with the corn head, the regular hay pickup head, and a direct cut hay head. And he used the direct cut hay head a few times and used the regular hay pickup head, I think, once or twice. And I know he used the corn head a lot because I think that's all he ever did really was corn silage. Well, I know that's all he ever did because that's all Dad ever talked about, them doing corn silage. So then sometime he bought a 185 secondhand, and the thing was never right. You'd shut it off since he bought it. He was the second owner, but I don't think it had a whole lot of hours on it to begin with. You'd shut it off, and it wouldn't sit maybe 5 minutes, and you'd have to give it a shot of ether again to get it started if you let it park out by the barn. I don't, and then so I guess my grandfather decided to trade it in and buy a brand new one, which that one was still kind of iffy, but usually if you were starting it up from a dead cold, you need ether. But then again, there is a history with those 301 Alice's that they're a little bit hard starters when it comes to cold, but once they're started, they're really good engines. So yeah, so those tractors lasted from, well, up until he sold the farm, and I think when he decided he was going to retire, which my dad, my uncle, who's the oldest, he thought growing up on a farm was the worst thing ever, so he got the fuck out of there and he went to move to Georgia. But then my dad and brother, I guess when my grandfather was getting ready to retire, he asked getting up there, he asked my dad if, he'd want, farm with my grandfather, and my grandfather said no, or my dad said no, because he was down in Massachusetts at the time working as a surveyor with my uncle. And then I guess my dad and my other uncle, because it goes my uncle, my dad, my other uncle, my aunt. So my dad, this uncle and my dad, I guess they did kind of talk about it, but my grandfather always said that farm would never support 2 families. But it's funny how he said that, because now my dad's the only one with the family. That uncle, the younger uncle, he doesn't have a family. He ain't even fucking married, which is hilarious to me. Anyways, but so, yeah, so it got sold out to, or not sold out, I guess the first people, husband and wife, they came in, and I think it was 84 is when they first sold or bought to the first farm. They're not first farm, for the first couple. Their last names was Ronco. I can't remember the first names, which probably shouldn't say it on here, but I guess the husband was all about it, and the wife wasn't so much. But like my grandmother said, that if you're gonna farm, the husband and the wife got to be both about it, especially in the 80s there. But still don't really think the farm crisis of the 80s really struck most farmers up here in the state, because most farmers up here this way were poor farmers anyways. You know, always buying, you know, second, third, fourth hand equipment, never really buying new stuff. Only some were and some weren't. And then it sold to the next people, which if you go back to the video where that picture of I got of the book of the farm when it says the family it was sold to, the Seavies, which might I add, they fucking destroyed that farm. I mean, the first winter they was there, the hay barn collapsed, because the hay barn was a specific way you had to do it. You could drive the wagons through, but in order to drive the hay wagons through, because I guess at the time they were kind of trusses, but you could call them, they weren't really trusses, they were more rafters. But my grandfather had it set up so you could swing the center post out of the way, and then as the hay built up in the barn, you just swing that post back and jack it up, put the blocks under it, and hold it up. Apparently this worked flawlessly for years and years and years for my grandfather. And apparently, and the jack and all the blocking were there alongside the wall, and I guess the CVs just, nah, I'm not gonna worry about it. So the hay barn ended up collapsing. And not long after the barn collapsed, the farm kind of started getting, like for instance, they got rid of the parlor and just went back to milking in regular tie stalls so they could have more cows. That's why they got rid of the parlor. But then again, they weren't really the greatest people, considering, I'll go off on this a little bit of a ramble here. So one of the biggest pet peeves of anybody I'll ever tell you is the farm that did the hay over to my grandparents' for a very short time before my cousin bought it. They're the same way. They would do their baleage bales, but instead of like putting them up close to the road, so like if you got to come get them in the wintertime, or taking them all back to the farm, they'd put them all the way down at the end across the other end of the field. So, and then when they'd need the bales in the springtime, they would never get them in the winter. They wouldn't come up and plow a road down to them in the winter and, you know, get the bales and then whatever. They would leave some all the way down across the end of the field, leave some up by the road. So then springtime rolled around, they would decide, no, we need to get our hay. So they would drive down across the field, get their hay, and they would leave some ruts. But that's kind of undeniable considering those fields are always wet year round, because when we used to bale hay, you could see the water on the tires of the tractor or the baler. So not really their fault, but still, I mean, they do it in the spring. And so the people that took the farm, they was the same way. So I guess one winter they had to call, I can't remember his name, have to come and with his bucket loader every snowstorm, because they didn't have a loader tractor. They didn't really have a tractor. They had one Belarus or Belarus, whatever the hell it's fucking called. All I know, it's a fucking Russian tractor. And they would have to go, you know, plow every snowstorm, get the baleage bales, bring them back. Well, to me, that's just a fucking waste of time if you got to go get your bales rather than fucking. So you'd either have to, you know, before a snowstorm, you'd either have to get all the bales that you want up at the farm in case you're going to be out without certain things for a few days, or so you're not having to deal with snow, which that's one of my biggest pet peeves. I hate that when I see, I hate it. And so then I don't know how long the farm lasted, but I know the dairy barn was still I know the silo was gone way before my time, because I can remember, and I'm saying this, from what I've seen, the original dairy barn was still standing in 03-ish, 04-ish, from what I have seen, and which brings up another point. Also, if you look at that picture, there's a windmill in there that was built all the way back in 19-something for World War I or World War II. I can't remember. It was originally, or not, it wasn't, it was originally built to pump water from the river, because that farm runs right along the river. So the original owners, the Bailey brothers, they would pump water. That windmill was used to pump water up to the farm for the cows. Well, in World War II, or World War II, it was used for a lookout tower for enemy planes, which, of all places an enemy plane is going to be, is small town fucking USA. Funny to me. But the one thing, that is one of the original buildings, well, the only original building that was built when the Bailey brothers owned it. Because my grandparents are smart. When they found out, you know, they realized, I guess, from the beginning that the CVs weren't all that bright and didn't really give a shit about certain things. So they immediately put that windmill into the Historical Society. So it's still standing. Because if you don't know about the Historical Society, when a building or something is put into that, you can't fucking mess with it. No matter if it's on your property or anything. Can't fucking touch it. So if the building, so basically, they either, so yeah, so that's my dad's side. So then my mom, I'm gonna actually, I'll come back.